Nintendo. What comes to mind when you hear that name? Family friendly? Accessible? Made for everyone? But not everything has been a bed of roses with the video game giant, and specifically, we're talking about how Nintendo has been at odds, even hostile, towards their competitive community for well over a decade. But that changed in November of 2021 when Nintendo partnered with Panda Global for the first official Smash Bros. Circuit, and while many were excited, some were skeptical.
I feel that over the last decade plus, Nintendo has proven the exact opposite. They themselves, not Panda Global, that Nintendo themselves do not have the best interests of the competitive Smash community at heart.
So here's the story of how we went from cease and desists to an official pro circuit. There are many examples of healthy relationships between game developers and their esports. Most recently, Riot Games capitalized on their esports expertise to launch the Valorant Champions Tour, and it was a success. Psyonix's Rocket League is another example of developer support done right. But the family-friendly gaming giant known as Nintendo is a lot less friendly when it comes to esports. In fact, they've been pretty draconian in all aspects. From thousands of game music takedown notices, shutting down ROM sites, or outright shutting down esports events that the community has supported. The last point goes to Nintendo's long-standing policy that their games are for everyone, at any skill level. Nintendo's goal was to bring people together through their games, something that their marketing campaigns have reflected since the launch of the Nintendo Wii. While many would argue that esports brings people together just as effectively, that's not how Nintendo views it. Super Smash Bros. Melee's own game director, Masahiro Sakurai, even went so far as to comment that the competitive scene is playing the game wrong, and that he would rather have the game serve casual players than become the interest of a small group of fanatic fans. Melee was released in November of 2001, and despite the opposition, or perhaps even in spite of it, Melee esports thrived under its grassroots leadership ever since the first tournaments in April of 2002, just 5 months after Melee's release. Melee would enjoy its time in the spotlight without Nintendo shutting anything down, as it toured the United States on the MLG circuit from 2004 to 2006 and hit the EVO stage, considered the premier fighting game tournament in 2007. But in 2008, Nintendo released Super Smash Bros. Brawl, and the rift between Nintendo and the community started to appear. Nintendo had stripped many of the competitive elements that made Melee popular in favor of gameplay mechanics that relied on chance and slowed the pace of the game down. That decision eventually led the community to create Project M in 2011, a mod for Brawl that retooled the game to play more like Melee. Project M and its successor, Project Plus, in 2019 were successful without Nintendo support. Nintendo was pushing what little support they provided behind Brawl for major tournaments like MLG Circuit and EVO. After all, at the time, Melee was already 8 years old, which is a good life for a competitive game, but it wasn't going to make Nintendo any more money. Still, the community wasn't done with Melee, even if Nintendo was. Even Brawl wasn't free from Nintendo's ire though. In 2010, MLG was unable to obtain the streaming or VOD rights to the game, so the only way to see the tournament was in person. The grassroots community would not be denied in the long run. Despite the lack of backing and attempted shutdown from Nintendo, in 2013 Melee returned to EVO after the fans raised $94,000 for charity, earning it a spot in that year's competition. 12 years after its release, Melee was still a thorn in Nintendo's side. Even without Nintendo's backing, communities surrounding the game kept it alive at small tournaments and in their hearts, but this also meant that Melee would be a difficult path for any pro to make a living off of.
I've been yelling at people in my chat for an hour, being like, fuck Nintendo. I'm like, guys, do you not understand? Like, I'm sure you remember when I sub-gold food 2 years ago.
Yeah.
This makes it so that someone in my position from 2 years ago doesn't have to do that.
For example, Melee at Main Stage 2021 had a prize pool of just $7,630. Smash Summit 10 online in November 2020, $15,351. CEO 2019, $3,300. Despite those smaller prize pools, the peak viewership of these tournaments hit 31,855, 52,818, and 46,744, respectively. When the pandemic hit the world, another fan-made project popped up in the Smash community, Project Slippy. Once again, the community was coming to the rescue of Smash esports, not Nintendo. Project Slippy allowed tournaments to function online through netcode implementation, but Nintendo didn't like that. They said it amounted to piracy and intellectual property theft, and told the November 2020 Big House tournament that it had to shut down. While reminiscent of the 2010 MLG streaming rights issue, Nintendo doubled down when their actual supported esports scene, Splatoon 2, began supporting the Melee scene. Players in the Splatoon scene that were participating in the Splatoon 2 North American Open started changing their names to include #FreeMelee and variations of it. Shortly after this development, the stream of the Splatoon 2 North American Open was cancelled, seemingly in response to their solidarity.
A big question for a lot of Melee players is the fact that like the biggest developments we've had in the past couple of years have been fan projects, fan mods, like Slippy. I mean, I think Melee dies in the pandemic. Melee dies in 2020 in a world without Slippy. That's just the case. That's just the case.
Nintendo's lack of support for one of the most beloved esports and their continual actions to shut it down have made it difficult for the community to trust Nintendo when it comes to esports. And that's what's happened with the announcement of Nintendo's official support of Melee through their partnership with Panda Global. While official statements from Nintendo announcing their intention to create a more consistent environment for Smash Bros. Inspired some Smash veterans.
This, to me, I guess as the person who was previously rank 1, is enough to light like the fire under my ass to actually fall in love with the game again and become the best player in the world again.
Not everyone had reacted positively. Mango's take may have been an outlier on the day of the announcement, but he's one of the 5 gods of Melee. His input has more weight than most, and it's rooted in the long history of Nintendo being more harmful than helpful. His skepticism is valid. Others have rightly questioned Nintendo's choice to only support North America.
The question about, the worldwide scene. I mean, one of the biggest, if you guys follow a lot of Japanese Smash community members like I do, this is a big question in the Japanese scene right now. AMSA tweeting about, okay, this is a North American thing. What does this mean for us? Melee notwithstanding, the ultimate side too, right? Like, people like Zach are probably going like, okay, I mean, we get 2,000 entrants for EVO Japan, and we win a controller. So, like, you're gonna throw us a bone? Like, you know what I mean? So that's a big question.
And journalists and competitors have pointed out why Nintendo doesn't deserve the Melee scene. Busy and Toph both agree on how Nintendo should really, at the very least, acknowledge the creator community of Smash.
Acknowledgement of the community's work to modernize the game. This is similar to 1, but basically an olive branch. If Nintendo just came in and said, look, we acknowledge that what I just said, the biggest developments in the scene have been projects that the community has put forth. But yes, I would love at least 3. 3 feels easy, man.
And so that's where we're at. Over a decade of battling back and forth between one of the biggest video game titans and one of the most passionate grassroots scenes. Time will tell how much impact the Panda Global circuit will have on the competitive Smash community, and if it's enough to repair the relationship between the players and Nintendo.